It began quietly, a movement of cargo ships no one was supposed to notice. In late summer, satellite trackers over the Sea of Japan began to pick up something strange. North Korean vessels sailing under mixed or false flags. Their cargo manifests incomplete, their routes irregular. To the untrained eye, it looked like ordinary trade. But to Western intelligence analysts, it was something else. The start of a $900 million arms deal that could tilt the balance of the war in Ukraine. For months, Pyongyang and Moscow had been dancing around sanctions, using ghost ships, falsified paperwork, and third-party ports to move artillery shells, missiles, and spare parts. North Korea saw an opportunity, a way to turn its massive Cold War stockpiles into cash, oil, and political leverage. For Russia, desperate to replace lost ammunition and keep up the tempo of its invasion, it was a lifeline. Every shipment meant thousands of new shells for the front. Every crate a symbol of defiance against isolation. But what neither side expected was how far Ukraine's reach had grown. The trail began with a whisper from an intercepted communication, a Russian logistics officer discussing special shipments from the Eastern partner. Analysts cross-referenced maritime data, infrared satellite imagery, and open-source intelligence from commercial trackers. Slowly, the pattern emerged. Ships leaving the North Korean port of Rajin, heading toward the Russian Far East, then overland toward the massive ammunition depots in Primorsky Krai. From there, trains would carry the weapons across Siberia and eventually into occupied Ukraine. The plan was simple, ambitious, and worth nearly $1 billion in traded goods and weapons support, until it wasn't. One night, a convoy carrying what intelligence sources later called the prime load, hundreds of ballistic shell casings and precision components, was making its way along a remote Siberian route. Drones appeared over the horizon, not Russian, not Chinese. Their flight patterns were erratic, hard to identify. Then within seconds, the entire stretch of highway lit up. Explosions rippled across the convoy. A series of secondary detonations followed, so violent they could be seen by thermal satellites 600 kilometers away. At first, Moscow blamed local sabotage. But then came the footage. Crisp, silent, unmistakable. Ukrainian-made long-range drones, likely launched from deep inside Russian territory, had struck the convoy with surgical precision. Within hours, independent analysts confirmed the target's nature. North Korean cargo meant for Russian use. It was more than just a strike. It was a message. In Kiev's view, this wasn't simply about destroying a shipment. It was about cutting off an artery. A signal to both Moscow and Pyongyang, their shadow trade wasn't invisible anymore. Every transaction, every secret transfer was being tracked, mapped, and neutralized. North Korea had bet big on this deal. For Kim Jong Un, the $900 million arrangement was more than economic. It was geopolitical theater, proof that Pyongyang could challenge the global sanctions regime and play a key role in sustaining Russia's war machine. The images of wreckage told a different story. Twisted metal, burned-out vehicles, and crates of destroyed ammunition marked with North Korean serial numbers. Inside Russia, the loss hit hard. Supply officers scrambled to reroute remaining shipments, but new bottlenecks emerged. The eastern ports tightened their activity, forcing Moscow to rely even more heavily on covert rail routes through Central Asia. Yet the damage was already done. Analysts estimate that the destroyed convoy alone set back Russia's planned resupply schedule by at least 6 weeks, a lifetime in wartime logistics. In North Korea, the response was anger and silence. State media, usually eager to trumpet its alliances, went quiet. No mention of the Economic Cooperation Program. No word from Kim Jong Un, who had personally approved the deal during his secretive visit to the Russian Far East months earlier. Behind closed doors, there were reports of purges among trade and defense officials. Some had assured Pyongyang's leadership that the weapons could be delivered without exposure. They were wrong. Western intelligence agencies were quick to exploit the opportunity. Leaked satellite images made their way to major news outlets. Commentators pointed to the strike as a turning point in the shadow war. The moment Ukraine showed it could hit not only Russia's front lines, but the hidden arteries feeding its war effort. For Ukraine, it was a triumph of intelligence fusion. Working with Western reconnaissance data, their drone operators had identified, tracked, and destroyed one of the most protected supply convoys in months. The strike demonstrated not just reach, but precision, the kind of capability once thought impossible for a nation fighting a defensive war. In Moscow, the propaganda machine tried to downplay the event, calling it an isolated act of terrorism. But internal reports told a darker truth. The destroyed shipment contained critical components for missile guidance systems, materials that North Korea could supply faster than any other ally. Without them, several planned production lines at Russian factories would slow or halt entirely. And while the Kremlin tried to deny its dependence, the satellite photos told a story of their own, of shrinking reserves, of stockpiles being relocated, of desperate measures to keep ammunition flowing to the front. The loss of North Korean support wasn't fatal, but it exposed a growing weakness. Russia's isolation was no longer abstract. It was measurable, trackable, and bleeding. Meanwhile, in Pyongyang, the diplomatic fallout deepened. U.S. intelligence reports began circulating that Kim Jong Un was furious at the exposure of his covert plan. His carefully crafted image as an untraceable arms broker had cracked. Within weeks, the regime slowed its outreach to Moscow, fearing further international backlash and renewed sanctions pressure from China, a nation uneasy with its neighbors' reckless alignment. For Ukraine, the strike wasn't just a tactical win. It was strategic theater. Every explosion echoed beyond the battlefield, reminding the world that even in the shadows, Russia could not operate unseen. It also sent a warning to other potential partners, Iran, Belarus, even private arms networks, that Kyiv had the means to find and eliminate their contributions before they reached the front. As winter approached, reports suggested that Russia's artillery usage had dropped sharply. Ukrainian drones, both aerial and maritime, continued targeting depots, supply lines, and ammunition factories deep inside Russian territory. Each hit made the next shipment harder, riskier, more expensive. And in Pyongyang, the experiment that was meant to be a billion-dollar geopolitical triumph had become a humiliating liability. The regime's grand plan to arm Russia, fund its own economy, and cement itself as a global power broker lay in ashes on a snow-covered Siberian road. In the end, the strike was more than an explosion. It was a revelation that Ukraine's intelligence network, supported by the West, could see through walls, borders, and propaganda. It proved that even the most secret deals could unravel under the relentless eyes of modern warfare. The message was unmistakable. No matter how far the allies of Moscow reach, no matter how secret their plans, Ukraine is watching. And sometimes, watching is all it takes before the fire falls from the sky. The night after the strike, the air above the Russian Far East was unnaturally quiet. Military satellites recorded a strange blackout, radar silence stretching across hundreds of kilometers. It wasn't an accident. Moscow had pulled the plug on several communications nodes, fearing further Ukrainian infiltration of its logistical networks. Somewhere in the chain, someone had left a digital door open, and Ukraine had walked right through it. Inside a fortified command post near Khabarovsk, officers huddled around a single grainy image, a cratered convoy road, the charred skeletons of vehicles, and scattered fragments of North Korean ordnance. The realization settled like a heavy fog. The strike wasn't random. It was surgical. Someone knew exactly what was inside those trucks. A senior logistics commander broke the silence. They shouldn't have known that route. Only 3 departments had clearance. That sentence would haunt the Russian Defense Ministry for weeks. Meanwhile, far away in Kyiv, deep beneath a nondescript building lined with soundproof concrete, The team behind
In
the
the pale
operation was
hours
already
before
moving
dawn,
on.
at exactly
Their screens
4:19
glowed with
a.m.,
live
the
telemetry
silence
from
of southern
drones still
Russia
in the
was
sky.
shattered by a single
Eyes that
thunderous
never blinked.
blast. A
The
Ukrainian
intelligence
strike
division
had
called
found
the
its
program
mark, a
Mirror
massive
Net,
logistics
a web
hub
of
near
digital surveillance
Voronezh.
that combined
Within seconds,
intercepted
a chain of
communications,
explosions
open
lit
source
the night
data,
sky.
and live feeds
What seemed
from
at first
private
like another
satellites.
precision attack
Its goal
soon
was simple:
revealed itself
track
as
every
something
shipment
far
connected to.
greater. Ukraine had obliterated a vast